Okay, so this is water conservation. And so again, my goal is for you to start using equations to find your answers instead of having to draw a graph. So here we've got the Stevens family that has a 50-gallon water container, and they're using 3 gallons per day. So they have already determined for us that we're going to use X and Y. And so here you've got their starting amount is 50, and they're using 3 gallons every day. So y equals 50 minus 3x. And you have to be careful with the order on subtraction. If instead you wrote y equals negative 3x plus 50, that's the same thing. But if you had written y equals 3x minus 50, that's different, because that would be saying they're starting with negative 50 gallons of water and they're gaining 3 gallons a day, which is not correct. On B, if they start with a full container, how many gallons of water would they have after 3 days? So you have to think about the fact that they're using 3 gallons a day, and they've done it for 3 days, so they've used 9 gallons. So they would have 41 gallons left. So make sure you're labeling your answer. And then if they have used the water for 8 days, so again, you would take your 3 times 8, which is 24. And if you do 50 minus 24, that's 26 gallons they would have remaining. If they've used the water for 12 days, so 3 times 12 would be 36, and 50 minus 36 would give you 14 gallons remaining. Then you have the Munster family that has 100 gallons of water to start with. So it'd be y equals 100. And they are using 8 gallons every day, so minus 8x. B says if they begin with a full water container, how many gallons would they have left after 3 days? So again, you have to think about 8 gallons a day, and they're doing it for 3 days, so that's 24. So I need to do 100 minus 24, and that would mean they have 76 gallons of water left. Excuse me. And then pardon me, if they're doing it for 8 days, so 8 times 8 is 64. So you need to do 100 minus 64, and you get that they have 36 gallons of water left. On D, if they do it for 12 days, so 8 times 12 is 72. No, I said that wrong. 8 times 12 is 96. And so if they use 96 of their 100 gallons, they have 4 gallons left. Number 3, is there a time when both families would have the same amount of water left? If so, when would it happen and how much water would they have? So the first family starts with 50 gallons and they're using 3 a day. And the second family starts with 100 and they're using 8 a day. And you want to know when those come out the same. And yes, we could draw a graph, but that's not maybe the most efficient way to do it. So I would pick to start by adding 8x to both sides, because I don't like it when my number in front of the x is a negative. So it's really up to you. Like, you could start by subtracting 50 from both sides, but my personal preference is to get the x's on the same side first. And also I like to have positives when I can. So that's why I chose to start by adding 8x to both sides. And then because I chose to do that first, on my next step, I'm going to subtract 50 from both sides. And so even if our work looks different, like, we will still have the same result as long as we solve correctly. So now I have 5x equals 50. And then I would want to divide both sides by 5 to get rid of that multiplication of 5. And so I would come up with x equals 10. So the x, remember, was number of days. So after 10 days, we need to also find out how much water do they have left. So you decide, do you want to substitute the 10 in for this x or this x? They'll give you the exact same answer. So let's say I use the first equation, and I'm going to substitute in the 10. So 3 times 10. So it means they've used 30 gallons of their water, because they're using 10 gallons a day. So I would have 50 minus 30. So they have 20 gallons left. And I would get the same answer if I used this other equation. If I did 8 times 10, that's 80. And 100 minus 80 would be 20. So after 10 days, they both have 20 gallons. So the answer is yes, there is a time. So yes, after 10 days, both families have 20 gallons of water. Number 4, in how many days would each family run out of water? So I start with my equation, and now I'm interested in when does my Y, my amount of water, come out to 0. So I'm going to substitute in 0 for my water on both equations, and then I have to solve them and figure out, well, how many days does that take them? And I would get the same answer off of a graph. Personally, I would start by adding 3x to both sides because, again, I don't like it when the number in front of the x is a negative. So on this equation, that's how I would start, is by adding 3x to both sides. And so I would have 3x equals 50. And then I could divide both sides by 3. And we don't always get a whole number for our answer. So it's at 16.6 repeating. So in this case, it might make more sense to round it up to 17 days. And if I were looking at a graph, like I would be able to see that it's happening between the 16th and 17th day, but I wouldn't really know what that decimal is probably by looking at the graph. All right, and then you would do the same steps on this equation. I would personally start by adding 8x to both sides, just because I don't like having negatives if I don't have to. And then that would give me 8x equals 100. And then I would divide both sides by 8. Again, the same answer the graph would give me, but most of us don't like graphing if we don't have to do it. So if I do 100 divided by 8, I'm going to get a decimal again. So I would get 12.5. So either the middle of the 12th day, or you could just round that up to say 13 days. So you just found out when would they run out of water. So by the 13th day and the 17th day is when they would be out of water.